Hello and welcome. This is the Carbon Watchdog podcast. This is the Carbon Watchdog podcast, and today we'll be discussing climate change in Nigeria and the issues surrounding climate justice and big corporations like Shell Oil in the Niger Delta and the all the factors that are affecting the non-industrialized countries in the global south. And today on the podcast, my guest is Kelo Uchendu from who's a student at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka in southeast Nigeria, and he volunteers with the Greater Green movement and SOS UK, which is Students Organising Sustainability, who are active in the UK and internationally. And so we've got I've missed out the key line about Carbon Watchdog. But essentially, the whole podcast, every podcast that we do is all about climate change and how we need to change, and not just ourselves, obviously, to adapt to the changing climate, which is becoming the new normal, but also how we're going to change so that we can halt global warming. And so let me go over to Kelo. Hi, Kelo. How are you doing?
Hello, Adam. I'm doing great, and it's nice to have you.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
So how is it going in Nigeria with COVID? I don't know whether you know, but in London, we've got the second lockdown at the moment for the whole of November.
Okay. I read that in the news. Here in Nigeria is a little bit different. We keep recording new cases every day, but the government cannot cannot afford to impose another lockdown, because initially when the first wave of COVID-19 hit Nigeria around March last year, we went on lockdown for about 2 months, and during the lockdown we found out that people are frustrated because people have nothing to eat at their various homes, so they need to go out and find a way to put food on the table. So after like 2 months of lockdown, the government have to ease the lockdown, and since then people have been going about their daily businesses, and government cannot just afford to impose another lockdown, because the necessary infrastructure or the necessary provisions to sustain these people is not there. So
Right.
people have to even
Bad news,
at risk of contacting COVID-19 have to still go out. So there is no sustainable lockdown here, though the schools are still closed, and talks are still ongoing on how to reopen the schools safely.
Right. Okay. So it's not good. Well, it's not great here, but it sounds like you've got a handful over there. The other problem that faces Nigeria in the long term after COVID has died down, hopefully, well, obviously not hopefully, we're going to have climate change. Have you got climate change already affecting Nigeria? That was a question that I was thinking of, and I don't actually know. Do you actually already see climate change making an impact there?
Yes, climate change is already in fact affecting Nigeria in very subtle ways. And one of the sectors which climate change is being threatened in Nigeria is the agricultural sector. Because here in Nigeria, we have about over 70% of the Nigerians dependent on ecosystem services such as agriculture for their livelihood.
Right.
And we've been recording cases of in the northern part of Nigeria, we have been recording low precipitations, and this is leading to drought and certifications in the north.
Rainfall.
And in the southeastern, we are recording high precipitations.
So sorry, in the north of Nigeria, that's the Sahel region. That's the
yeah. We've been recording series of drought, and the desertification is fast encroaching. And while in the south, we are recording high precipitations, which is leading to flooding and erosion in the south.
And you have,
And
sorry, but you have tropical rainforests in the south, right?
yeah,
Okay, so but it's essentially it's quite a there's quite a lot of rainfall anyway. What sort of level of rainfall do you get? I mean, you don't call it the monsoon, do you? You call it the monsoon or the wet season. You get most of your rainfall is concentrated in the wet season, and then you have a
yeah,
big long dry season, right?
yes, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yes.
in the
Yes, that's how it is here in Nigeria. We have the rainy season and the dry season, and most of the rainfall is concentrated during the rain season. And over the years, we've been recording variations in rainfall, in pattern of rainfall, and it is becoming increasingly um, varying increasingly as the years goes by, and is still predicted to continue. And what this is causing is that over there in the north, due to the drought, the northerners, the Fulanis, who are predominantly herdsmen or cattle rearers, will have to migrate southwards to in search of green pastures to graze their cattle. And in this, they move towards the south. The southerners, who are predominantly farmers, they tends to, and this tends to lead to communal violence and clashes, because these farmers accuse the herdsmen of
right.
destroying their farmland. And these
Is
crises have
sorry,
framed.
sorry, Kelo, is that their normal way of life? Do they normally just go wherever they need to go?
Um,
Do they? I mean, in England, we just have farms, right? So if
yes,
you have cattle, they're
yes,
on your farm, and you can't go anywhere else. You can't take your
yes.
cattle anywhere else.
Yes, they okay, before 30 years from now, they are usually settled in the north. But now, due to the drought and the desertification in the north, they have to migrate onward. So now they are more like nomads. They have to take their cattle and graze it, and take them through the move southwards in search of green pastures.
Right.
So
Or they lose the cattle, or the cattle just basically die, or just can't survive.
yeah,
Right. Okay.
yeah. So, and these crises have claimed over 2,000 lives since 2017. So one of the major challenges climate change is causing in Nigeria is the communal crisis due to resource management, because these farmers are feeling this impact. The herdsmen, those who are cattle rearers, are looking for grasses for green pastures to graze their cow. They have to move southwards, and
Yeah.
in turn they are crashing with southerners, who are predominantly farmers. And it's
Right.
one of the major crises that we're facing here in Nigeria, aside the Boko Haram issue.
So Boko Haram. That's the essentially they're the uh, are they an offshoot from Al Qaeda? Is that right?
They
Something like that.
are Islamic ISIS. I think they are the
ISIS. Oh, okay.
Islamic State of West Africa, the ISIS West
Yeah.
Africa. Yeah, they are an offshoot of them.
And so the terrorists are exploiting the situation.
Yeah, they have their stronghold in the northeastern part of Nigeria,
Right.
and even though the Nigerian forces and with the Chadian forces are trying to cram them again, but they still hold control a considerable amount of regions in that area.
Okay. So if Boko Haram didn't exist, and just looking at climate change, forcing these farmers, forcing the herdsmen to move south, I mean, presumably there would still be conflict there,
Yes,
and
exactly,
and
exactly.
they, I mean, what sort of conflict is it? Uh, do they kill each other? Is it leading to people getting
Yeah.
killed?
Yes, over 2,000 people have died due to these conflicts. These conflicts are just where you find out that uh, villages are being attacked, because maybe a farmer can accuse a herdsman of destroying his cattle, and might attack the farmers, might attack the cattle rearer, and in the evening you will hear of a visa attack by Fulani herdsmen attacking the villages. So
Yeah,
this has been leading to a series of violence and crises here in Nigeria, and over 2,000 lives have been lost due to this violence.
that's really bad. So just does the government recognize this? Does the
Yeah,
government do they say well, you never hear in the UK, we never hear like, there's loads and loads of stuff about climate change in the news all the time. And it's always about, you know, do we have enough solar energy to do this? Do we have enough? What about all this gas coming from Russia? And every now and again, you hear about like the consequences, like wildfires in California and Australia. But you don't hear about people killing each other. You never hear
Yes,
about
yes,
stuff like that. This is kind of like, oh, you know, you dig that up, but it's not, you can dig that up somewhere if you look hard enough, but it's never meant, it never gets into the headlines. But
yeah,
this must be happening right across Africa, right? All
yeah,
the way to the, and all of the countries on the south of the Sahara, they must be having the same, must be
yes,
suffering the same impact.
yes,
Yeah.
in very many subtle ways.
So do you think the government is, do you think the government can cope with this? Or do you think the government is just going to, when it comes to the international negotiations, do you think Nigeria is going to say, look, we've got to do something about climate change. It's just tearing our society apart. Or what is their stance? What is the position of the Nigerian government? Where do they stand and what do they say?
Okay, in terms of the conflict, which is as a result of climate change, the Nigerian government have not come out openly to admit that, though they've been trying to put measures in place to save this conflict. They are also proposing the idea of having grazing community in each state in the southern region, so that this will have to put in check these herdsmen that have to, wander about in the search of green pastures. But in coming to the terms of climate change and the policies where Nigerian government is proposing, I
Yeah,
think they are more focused on looking at the NDCs, which they looking at Nigerian NDCs. They are more focused on making commitments because other people are making commitments. Nigeria pledged to reduce its CO2 emission according to their NDCs by 20% and unconditionally and 45% conditionally.
yeah,
But if you look at how they plan to do this, they say they want to increase their investment in renewable energy sources. They've not tried to, tackle some of the main issues, such as building adaptation or mitigation measures to some of these issues. They are more mainly focused on and working on all talks and on paper without action. And one of the
yeah,
reasons this is so is because there is a huge divide between the government and the academics here in Nigeria. So
right.
the government, those who are in government have little or no background in academics or in what climate change is all about. So they are just people who are politicians without background in this area. And those who are in academics and they have
Yeah,
failed to try to, partner or collaborate with those who are in academics to actually work out policies that have to serve the people or that address these challenges. So
right.
that has been one of the major issues that we're facing. So even looking at the Nigerian NDCs, to be honest, the NDCs is just they just put out the NDCs
Yeah,
for, but they are not doing anything.
yeah.
They
The
are
non
not taking any good action
what is
to
it called? The national
determine contributions,
nationally
national
determined contributions
contributions. Yes,
in terms of CO2 reduction for the
yes.
to meet the Paris climate targets. Yeah. Okay, so you've in Nigeria. There's a big the big story for environmentalists is Shell oil in the Niger
Okay.
Delta.
Yeah,
You're not in that region. You're in southeast Nigeria, and the
yeah,
Niger Delta is right in the middle in the south, right?
yes, but
But
I've been to Niger Delta a couple of times.
oh, you've been there. Okay.
Yes, in fact, my climate activism started in 2016 when I was in Niger Delta. So I've spent a lot of time there.
So um, so you know what Shell is doing is probably a lot better than we do.
Yeah,
We hear that Shell is trying to go carbon neutral by 2050, and we hear all of this stuff about you can now go to a Shell garage in the UK and you can buy your petrol, fill up your car, and you can buy offsets at the same time, which offset your carbon emissions from that tank of petrol. And so this is the general approach by Shell in this country, but they never talk about what's going on in the Niger Delta, or how long they intend to pump oil and gas down there. And they obviously never talk about things like Ken Saro-Wiwa and the fact that it was 25th anniversary of his execution, because he stood up to Shell Oil and he said, we want to, what did his main point was, he was with the Ogoni people. The Ogoni people had
the movement for the survival of organic people.
Right. So you look at the map and it's only a very small area.
Yeah.
But what he was doing was, obviously it was too much for Shell and it was too much for the Nigerian government at the time.
Yeah.
And they executed him. They rounded him up, had a trial, which was condemned internationally for being completely unfair, and they executed him. Now, when you've got situations like that, it makes you think that if you're going to say anything against the government or against any corporations, that you have to be quite brave. You have to be quite sure that you're not going to get executed.
Yes,
Well, no, you have to be quite sure that what you say is something that they're not really going to be able to argue about in a big way.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to make sure that if you start organizing, then, well, when you start organizing, you have to be twice as careful, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that the Shell Oil situation is with the Niger Delta and with the destruction that they've caused there. That's not really a climate change issue. That is more a local environmental issue, because they have completely destroyed huge areas of mangroves, natural habitat, and caused unlimited pollution. I don't know how much pollution they've caused down there, but when you watch the videos, it's shocking.
Yeah.
So I guess you see that and you see what's going on and you go, okay, you're not going to approach Shell on this issue, right? Climate change has got to be something that, well, how do you approach it? How do you tell people about climate change in Nigeria?
Okay. Let me talk a little about Shell in Nigeria, and then I go to your question. Shell is the oldest multinational oil company in Nigeria, and within 1976 to 1991, Shell has spilled over 2 million barrels of oil in the Niger Delta region. Okay, and these have led to a lot of destructions, both the lands and the water. And in 2011, the United Nations Environmental Program did an assessment, and it was discovered that it would take the communities about 30 years to recover. Traces of hydrocarbons, benzene, and even carcinogen has been found in the outdoor air and the waters. And in fact, at a rate which is 900 times higher than what is recommended by the World Health Organization. And over the years, there have been promises, series of greenwash to clean up those areas. But Shell is yet to make any significant commitments towards tackling these issues.
Still.
And yes, in 2015, there was a case in London that they agreed that they will pay about $84 million in settlement to one of those communities, and which agreed, but yet we're still not in progress. The cleanup started in the bridge between Shell and the Nigerian government to clean up the community in 2016, of which even up to today, they've less than 11% of those places. They started work at less than 11% of the areas marked, and yet those 11% they've not been able to complete it. So you find that they are still doing nothing, little to nothing to address those issues. When in the early 19,
because if you compare that to BP,
Yeah.
in the Gulf of Mexico, where they had the Deepwater Horizon disaster, they basically completely trashed the livelihood of so many fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
They had to completely uh, compensate everybody involved. They had to spend billions on the compensation, and
Yeah.
it was immediate. But you're saying that Shell has essentially just done nothing for how long now? 30 years?
Yeah. More
Yeah.
than. So, and even when the environmental movement led by the late Ken Saro started in the early 90s, and which everybody knows the story, they were completed by the then Nigerian military head of state, and even people and a lot of organizations have has been able to establish that Shell have a hand in this, but Shell have come out openly to to this to deny these crimes. But what we've seen is that Shell still lack this commitment to
Yeah.
tackling or to to making up for their actions to try to invest in this community to clean up these communities. Until
Uh-huh.
today, these communities still don't have access to clean drinking water. In 21st century, they still don't have access to clean drinking water. So you see
Right.
that this is in how we see how big corporations like this and how they have they have access to resources, they have the money, they have the resources. So you even if you take them to court, they keep delaying the process. They have the money to fund the process. You find that at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you give up on the action. So when we talk about that's one of the major issues we are still facing in the fight against climate justice. You find out that these big corporations still bankroll COPs, the annual conference of parties. You find out that these big corporations sponsor this event and find a way to buy themselves into the decision-making processes, which is one of the campaigns that we're working on to keep these big polluters out of conference climate negotiations because they find a way, they have the resources, they
Mhm.
have the manpower to buy their way into the decision-making processes. And they try to find a way to water down these decision-making processes.
Right.
That you find out that look
So
at how
when they're deciding things, when things come up for decision, they're always going, "Oh, well,
yeah,
no, we're not quite sure. You have to wait. Yeah, have to delay everything."
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I think that to be able to actually um, take ambitious climate action, we have to be able to keep these people, these big polluters, these corporations with background of human rights abuses out of climate negotiation processes, so that we be able to make meaningful or significant progress.
Right. Yeah. Gotcha. That's exactly the same in this country as well. They have the fossil fuel industry. I'm not sure which ones, Shell, BP, other ones. They have people sitting um, on the board of on the advisory board for the Committee on Climate Change, which is the organization that advises the government here in the UK on how to reach zero emissions by 2050. And lots of people are asking, well, why are they there? It's like asking smokers to come along to the to the medical conference about the
Yeah,
bad effects of smoking and
of
how quickly
smoking,
you
yes.
need to give up smoking. You ask the smokers if they should give up, and how difficult is it for you to give up? Oh, that's it. It's going to take a long time to give up.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's going to take a really long time. so the uh, so the kind of activities that you've been involved in uh, involve what were you just talking about the stuff with SOS UK?
Oh,
And was that how you got involved in the mock COP,
okay.
which is the alternative climate conference that
Yeah.
is going on? Is it going to start in December?
No, it's starting 19th of this month, 19th of November.
Okay, so it's starting this month. It's going to be at the same time as the original
Yeah.
COP26
Okay.
in Glasgow would have been if it wasn't delayed by COVID.
Yes, yes,
It's a great name, mock COP. Mock COP
yeah.
just is just great. So and that is going to be, well, why don't you say about it? You know more about it than I do.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't get your question. You said
So you say more, can you describe what is mock COP? I've said when it's
okay.
going to take place. It's basically an alternative
All right.
COP26 at the time that it
Okay.
should have been. But who is
Mock
it?
up.
Who is organizing it and taking part?
All right. Mock up is being organized by a series of students global from all the continents except Antarctica. It started around August when the with the news about the postponement of COP26 broke, and the youth found that the youth were a bit disappointed that an important conference as the conference of party is being postponed. It shows that world leaders does not yet understand the need for an urgent climate action. So we decided to come together to fill in this void created by the postponement of COP26 by a virtual, inclusive 2 weeks online conference to show world leaders how they could have done it and to raise
Right,
ambitions ahead of COP26 coming, which was postponed next year in 2021, which is
right.
November 2021. And what we want to do is we are bringing 3 to 5 delegates from all countries in the world. That was which I wanted to do. But we've been able to get delegates from over 150 countries who will be working together with each other to draft a throughout the 2 weeks program to draft a high-level statement on behalf of their country, which will be sent to world leaders ahead of COP26 to raise awareness. So, and we've had supporters from academics, from people from the UN Youth Envoy, and from even the president of COP, Ayok Sharma. So we've enjoyed the support of these people.
Alok Sharma, he's the British Department
Yes,
of Energy guy.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Okay,
and
that's good.
yes.
So basically
So
you're saying him, look, you're saying to him, look, this is how it can be done,
yes,
right?
yes. So
Yep.
we've been working through the process, and the conference will be starting on the 19th. And at the first week, we have speeches and workshops by high-level individuals and activists, by high-profile individuals and activists. And the second week, we now have the delegates work to draft the high-level statement, which we are also looking at coming up with a treaty which we can encourage countries to adopt, thereby making up for the policy gap that existed due to the postponement of COP26. And we have 5 key themes that we'll be focusing on for this year
Yeah.
event, which is climate justice, resilient livelihood, climate education,
Okay.
the health and well-being, and then NDCs, which is the national determined contributions. So we are focusing on this main key topic
Right.
for the program. Thank you.
Okay. So basically, since you're obviously everybody's going to be quite green and environmentally minded, it's going to be relatively easy for you all to go, let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's reduce emissions to zero.
yeah, exactly.
So how are you going to frame that when you actually put a message together for Alok Sharma and the other people who are actually organizing COP26 in Glasgow? How are you going to frame it so that you don't get the reaction from them where they just say, yeah, well, it was easy for you guys because you didn't actually have to implement anything because you're just doing a
Yes.
demonstration, but we've actually got to do it. I mean,
Okay.
I'm not
Um.
saying it's. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying you shouldn't
Yes.
try. Obviously, you got to.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
really good that you're doing it, but I'm just envisaging these guys going, "Oh yeah, you know, these activists. They think that they
Okay.
can flick a switch and
Um.
make everything better."
One thing we are doing is that we've been able to secure the partnership and work with academics and fact seekers, people who are very experienced in these areas to help us shape these statements. We don't want to come up with a statement that
Okay.
that is ambitious but not realistic. So we want
Okay.
to come up with a statement that is realistic and ambitious at the same time. So, and we recognize that some of us as youth activists might not have the necessary experience or expertise to come up with this, but we know what we want. So we
Right.
are working with academics, people who are experienced in this field, to help us shape this statement. You know, they help us fact-check our statement. They help us, you know, put this statement in a way that when you present it to these people, they will see a good reason to adopt it.
Okay. So it sounds like a citizens' assembly. We had a climate assembly in the UK, and they had one in France as well, and I think they're planning other ones. And essentially, they they brought in people from all different walks of life and different levels of education, and they sat them down, about 100 people, and then they brought in lots of experts to talk to them and say, look, these are the options. This is what you can do, and this is what you can't do. And if you do this, this is what will happen. And they gave them lots of options, and they came up with some really good stuff. And it sounds like this is pretty much the same sort of process that you'll be going through.
Yeah.
That's great. Did you have any famous names for scientists or academics or the experts who are helping you, who you're
Um,
bringing in?
Okay, we have both academics from the global north and the global south. One of the leading figures in climate justice here in Nigeria is Professor Chukwumeziri. He's a professor in the University of Leeds in the UK, and he's one of our fact seekers. Also, we have some research institution from the Oxford University working with us. So we have these high profile academics, some of the high profile working with us to shape this statement.
Right. Okay. Well, good luck with that. It sounds really good. It sounds really interesting. And what part are you taking?
Okay, I'm one of the event coordinators. We have 18 event coordinators from all continents. In Africa, we have 4 event coordinators, and I'm one of the event coordinators in here in Africa. And I'm in charge of the fringe events, trying to reach out to delegates, recruit these delegates, and help them shape their statements and support delegates from Africa. So other event coordinators from other continents will also support delegates from their respective continents or region. And we just don't want to stop after the 2 weeks conference. After the
Yeah.
2 weeks conference, we still support these delegates to engage their country leaders to raise ambitions ahead of COP26, which is November. So we'll still after the conference, we'll still have a legacy work to do from now till November next year ahead of
Right.
COP26. So we'll still continue to push till we make sure that world leaders agree and start taking visible and realistic climate action.
Yeah. Right. In the worst case scenario with COP26, if the coronavirus hasn't, if society hasn't produced an effective vaccine,
Vaccine.
then they're going to have to do it like you're doing it anyway.
Yes, exactly.
So, I mean, it's a good example that the so that kind of leads into the stuff about you were talking about you had 5 themes, and the first one you mentioned was climate justice, and
Yeah.
that leads into the next bit that I wanted to talk about, because climate justice is something that's a very new term over here. I don't think it's even made it into the Oxford Dictionary yet. The Oxford Dictionary is kind of they have this sort of prize, not a prize. What is it? They announce every year their favorite words that they've put into the dictionary, new words or new, not words, but concepts or expressions that they put in the dictionary. And last year they had climate denial, and they had climate. It wasn't climate justice. They missed that one out, which I was disappointed by, essentially. And the what I found is that I got completely the wrong idea about what climate justice was. And the only way I discovered that I'd made a mistake is because I was talking to some German friends, and they said, and we were having this discussion with it, and the discussion was getting really we just weren't talking about the same thing, and we both knew it, and I couldn't work out why. And it's because the expression in Germany, climate justice, just does not have the same, it doesn't have the same connotations that it has in English, in the English language, or at least in England and probably in America as well. When you say justice, that often means, when you want justice, that means that you want to see, it often means that you want to see somebody punished. And the problem with that in terms of the climate movement is that there's a far left group of climate activists who want to see they want to see all the oil companies punished in terms of made to pay reparations for extracting all of this fossil fuel out of the ground and pumping it into the atmosphere, because the justice part would be that they get all their profits taken away from them and used to pay back to people. But of course, the problem with that is that, you know, we've got a legal system that works based mainly on capitalism for the last 200 years, and that's not how it works. So that, you know, it doesn't get you very far. And it also means that a lot of people start getting worried. You know, you have a lot of people working for fossil fuel companies, and then you start talking about punishing the fossil fuel companies, and maybe even punishing the executives. So it goes into a really negative space. I thought, you know, I don't think it's a good idea to start pushing for climate justice if you think that we're going to drag everybody into a courtroom and prosecute them and sue them for all their misdemeanors in causing climate change. And then I realized, actually, no, that's not what climate justice means. I mean, to a certain extent, it does. A lot of people do feel very bitter about the fact that capitalism has taken us to the point where we have almost destroyed the climate. And if we don't act very, very quickly, that things are going to get really bad very fast. And so a lot of people do sympathize with that point of view, that the climate has been damaged by the oil corporations and by capitalism and the way that system works. And you can see it. For instance, I saw a photo on I saw a headline on a headline photo on a news story where somebody was protesting about in the US, protesting about a pipeline, and their placard, they were waving a placard, and it said, "Just be grateful that we only want justice and that we don't want revenge." And I was thinking that really sums it up for me. That's the difference actually between what climate justice means. Climate justice means equality. People just want an equality in the way they're treated.
Yeah.
And so when I in the industrialized countries in the north, like in America and Europe, when we talk about climate change, often this whole concept of climate justice just is forgotten about. We think about, you know, oh, what's going to happen? It's going to rain more. We're going to have more extreme weather. So we're going to have more flooding. So what do we need to do? And we just completely forget the fact, like you're saying earlier on, that it's really affecting people now in countries that are a long way away from us. And we don't hear about it because it doesn't make the news. And these countries didn't have hardly any of the benefits from all of the industrialization that Britain has had, for instance. And the concept of climate justice, it actually goes back, before it was called climate justice, it goes back all the way through the United Nations negotiations before we had the Paris Agreement and before we had this idea of nationally determined contributions where everybody just goes, okay, look, I'm America and I'm going to cut my emissions by this much and you do what you want. And whether I do mine whether I cut my emissions completely or whether I cut my emissions to a level that everybody else agrees is fair, well, that doesn't matter because it's nationally determined. I, America, will determine what level I'm going to reduce my emissions by. So that doesn't contain any climate justice. That doesn't contain this element of climate justice. And that was dropped from the United Nations negotiations back in 2010. I think the Copenhagen COP15, I think it was, don't quote me on that. It was a bit of a disaster. Barack Obama was there and China was saying, you know, we're not going to cooperate with anybody. So essentially a lot of the big countries just had no grounds for negotiation. They just didn't manage to come up with anything. But the underlying theme had climate justice in it. It was called, it was basically, what we're going to do is we're going to work out how much emissions the world can still emit. And that's essentially encapsulated in the carbon budget. So the global carbon budget, it means that we have got between 8 to 10 years of emissions at the current rate before the global carbon budget is totally used up. And once the carbon budget is used up, then we've got to stop. Otherwise, we blow the Paris Climate Agreement. We will. Okay. All right, we're rolling it. We're rolling again.
Yeah.
So I was just basically going on about climate justice and not understanding climate justice until I realized that it basically meant equality rather than punishing people.
Exactly.
So so how does it affect you in Nigeria? When you think about climate justice, what do you think? What occurs to you?
Okay.
What's the concept?
For me, what I see climate justice as is being able to see climate action as an ethical and moral obligation, because understanding that the people who will suffer the dire consequences of climate change are people who are doing little or nothing to contribute to this climate change. People who are, you know, so for me, climate justice is for, for people, for individuals, for countries to see climate action not as an act of charity. We want to cut down our emissions because we want to be charitable, but to see it as the ethical thing to do and the moral and ethical thing to do, as a moral obligation to do that, to cut down their emissions. To me, that is what climate justice means to me personally. Other people have what it means to them. And I have seen situations where poor countries don't want to take actions because they want rich countries who are responsible for these emissions to fund them before they are able to take actions. And I've seen in the situations where rich countries don't want to take action because they think other countries are not taking action. Maybe US don't want to take action because China is not taking action.
Mm-hmm.
This shouldn't be the case. Climate justice should be that every country, every individual should be able to take action because it's their moral obligation to do that. It's the ethical thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Not because people are doing, or because people are asking you to take action, or because activists are signing petitions and you have to take actions, or you have to greenwash us into believing that you're taking action. Why, in that sense, you're not taking action? And another thing is that most countries, most developed countries, pledged to go carbon neutral by 2050. Pledging to go carbon neutral is a good thing. But one thing is, even though you pledge to go carbon neutral, can you show us the emission reduction pathway that will take you to net zero? If you are able to show us the emission reduction pathway that will take you to net zero by 2015, yes, that is good. Another thing, are you staying within, which warming limit are you working with? And are you staying within your country's fair share of the global carbon budget?
Mm-hmm.
If we have a global carbon budget of about 600 gigaton for a 50%, for a less than 50% chance of exceeding 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius, are you staying within your country fair share of the global carbon budget? And what is the emission reduction pathways that will take you to net zero? That's one thing that's what I see climate justice as, being able to see climate change and climate action as the ethical thing to do, and not as you know. Thank
Right.
you.
It is very difficult for people to grasp that concept because everybody else is, that's what people look to their neighbors and their friends and their work colleagues to see what to do, and they see nobody doing anything, so they
Exactly.
just carry on. But trying to get people to believe that it's something that they have to do out of moral and ethical reasons,
Reasons,
it's
yeah.
it's a difficult one. But it's so, I mean, at the end of the day, for me, the ultimate example would be the small island states like the Seychelles or Mauritius, okay, or even, and there's tons of little small ones like Vanuatu and lots of little small ones in the in the West Pacific. They will literally lose their country. They will lose everything they've got beneath the waves when sea levels when sea levels have risen
Yeah,
far enough. It will just be gone. And
exactly.
if we don't have a moral obligation to save them from that fate, then there's no argument. There's no better argument that I can think of. So we really have to do it.
Exactly.
You just can't go, oh, I'm just going to put some more petrol in my car and I'm just going to fly on holiday. You know, sorry about the CO2. You just can't do that. It really is something that you've got to believe is necessary.
Exactly.
And the theme at the mock COP that you're doing, you're one of the 5 themes is climate justice. Is that
Yeah.
going to obviously you're just facilitating it and it's not happened yet, but can you encapsulate what your experts are saying already about climate justice? Is that more or less?
Okay. Okay. Currently, we've not corrected all their opinions, but what we want to do is we want to make them, do a video on talking on from their perspective on these various areas, and these videos will present to our delegates to, listen to the video, try to adopt it, and try to reflect on their country's journey, and to be able to come up with a statement that reflects how their country is going to, what climate justice looks like for their country. So for all countries it's different.
Yeah,
For Nigeria, what climate justice looks for Nigeria, what Nigerian government should be able to do, as it to contribute to it to climate justice is different from what the US government have to do. So for every country, it's different and unique. So each delegate should be able to understand the stance of of their respective countries,
yeah.
and write on behalf of their country. That's what we plan on doing.
Uh-huh. Good one. I hope you're going to publish them. Are they going to go online?
Yes, definitely. After we'll definitely publish the
Uh-huh. Right, good
statement.
one. Okay, the some of the other stuff that I've got on my list of questions was the there was a big there was some headlines out of Nigeria that we saw where the police had there was some sort of elite police squad, and there were some massive demonstrations. Was
Yeah,
did that affect you?
yeah, definitely. That was the special anti-robbery squad. The special anti-robbery squad, which is the SACS, is a unit in of the Nigerian police that is responsible to on clamping down on armed violence and on armed robbery.
Yeah.
But over the years they've grown radical, that they have been series of human rights abuses, extrajudicial killing, and they kill people without even going through trials, and they harass people, they extort people, they mount roadblocks on the road and harass innocent passerbys, extort money from them. So over the years, these issues
Wow.
have been, people have had complaints have been, have been going. Even
Yeah,
Amnesty
not
Nigeria has
surprised.
been trying to address this issue, but nothing has been done.
Right.
And in even 2019, 2018, the Nigerian government who can issue a statement that they are reforming the sector.
Yeah.
But early, later, around 2 months, last month, it started as a video trended where these people dragged two young boys out of the hotel and shoot them instantly in the front of the hotel.
Wow.
So yes, so the video now sparked an online outrage, you
Yeah.
know, and then what started as a Twitter hashtag #EndSARS now evolved into millions of youths taking to the streets to take action. Funny enough, 3 months or 4 months before this incident, I had a call with PFF Global, where I talked about this occurrence, of which they invited some lawyers from Nigeria and from other parts of Africa to
Right.
find a way on how to address this. And before the events, the massive protest that took to the street. So the
Yeah.
youth came out on the streets to protest against these things. And after 1 week of protests, the federal government issued a statement disbanding the same set of police force. But the youth are not convinced, because previous years they've made the same statement in Twitter over the years, and still
Oh,
nothing changed, and still nothing changes. So the youth are
yeah.
not satisfied. They are not. So they continued the process till some politicians started um, funding or started buying stocks to
Yeah.
attack protesters. Or because the attack on protesters now led to some sort of escalating violence, because these politicians are paying talks to vandalize properties and attack innocent protesters, so that the
Right.
government forces can now come and take control. And there are even cases where the government forces opened fire on innocent protesters at the Lekki toll gate. So, and that incident escalated in all parts of the country, with days of protests
Yeah.
before they are able to um, bring the situation under control. And
Okay.
currently, even the people who are very active in the protest are still facing the federal government just freezed their accounts, so they do not have access to their accounts. The people who are in charge, who lead
Okay.
some of these protests, are still facing persecutions here in Nigeria. So
Right.
it's really very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. It's bad news. That's you have all sorts of problems to deal with in Nigeria that
Uh, yes,
man,
yes,
we don't have that sort of stuff in Britain. I
yeah,
mean, if we do have it, then you don't hear about it. No,
yeah.
it's bad news. Well, good luck with that. Um, I guess
Thank you.
we've reached the end of the podcast, really. So well, thank you very much for being on the podcast and giving me all of your information.
Thank you very much.
And wish you the best of luck with Mock Cop. And I hope that goes really well. I'm looking forward to
Thank you.
seeing some of the videos that come out of that and seeing the replies. And make sure you get the message
Uh,
across to the dignitaries at COP26. Tell them how to do it. Sounds like they need it.
uh, uh,
Okay,
Thank you very much, Adam.
right. Okay, thank you very much for listening, everybody. That was my guest, Kelo Uchendu from Nigeria. And my name was Adam Hardy, and that was the Carbon Watchdog podcast. And you can fund this via Patreon if you go to the website and you find a link there that'll get you to it. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll tune in again next time. Bye. My name is Adam Hardy, and this is the Carbon Watchdog podcast. All of the website content and the podcasts are free. If you like what Carbon Watchdog is doing, then please head over to patreon.com using the link on the website and support me there. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll tune into the next one. Bye.